get it fixed up. As we go through the intro, has anybody seen? I went to Walmart today because I wanted to get some ink cartridges, and I talked to the manager there, and wow, oh wow, they are already starting to see the shortages, and they don't know when anything is coming in. There's spot shortages. They're running out of like simple things that they don't have really backups for. I'm just going to say off the bat, if you're going to need something, like for example, our rods in the hot water heater broke. I went and bought two more today just because they broke twice already in 3 years. So if I'm going to have to fix it again, I'm definitely going to go ahead and get a couple extra, and I would suggest you do the same. As I've perusing the videos in news across Asia, it seems that almost all goods have ceased coming to America from China, including Hong Kong. Anything mail, anything shipping, anything air freight. So we're kind of cut off for a minute. Now, that's not everything. That's only 50% of our products. There's still some stuff coming from Europe. Oh, wait, it's going to be expensive too. There's tariffs on that. And at what point do we feel the blowback? And I'll tell you, the beef industry right now, feeling the blowback. You know why? They lost 1/3 of their beef exports. China said, no more beef from America. 1/3 of our raised beef in America goes to China. I didn't know that. I thought it was less. And a full almost 40% of our pork production through Smithfield Foods, they send half hogs. China said, take it all back. We don't want any of it. So now the ranchers are having trouble getting farm financing, and here goes our food supply because the banks won't give them the money they need on loan to continue operations because they need to shrink their herds, and we are in a debacle. So still trying to get my camera. Ransom, take it over while I get through the technical difficulty. Thank you for everybody joining us tonight. We wanted to talk about solutions, maybe what you want to think about. Our lives are looking a little bit stranger by the minute, and now we have yet more CMEs pounding on the planet. As of last night, I think it was a KP index around 7 or so, but it already created some power outages. That's kind of a rarity. Usually it needs to be around a 9 or higher for power outages. But with the weakening magnetic field on the planet, perhaps this is all tied into why we're seeing this reset of the world because of food production, the way people are going to process information, and the way that our infrastructure is not going to hold in a new electric field. Well, causation, you need to distract the masses while all this is happening so the reset can occur. Anyway, Ransom, take it over. Thank you for being here.
Right. Yeah, this whole new Teams thing, it makes me reset every show. But
Yeah, right. I'm
technology.
gonna save them with you, man.
No, I was actually looking at that. You know, they have power outages. Let me put that up here on screen. Um, in Puerto Rico, they're just blacked out down there.
Yeah, it's
Official.
strange because that's really far south. You would be expecting some, north in Canada or north in Europe, but here it is. Like, is there any telluric current running down somewhere that we don't know about with mineralization in the crust suddenly that over amplifies down onto those islands? I'm curious.
I don't know. I was thinking just, it got a random batch of it there, I guess. Plus, not to be mean, but Puerto Rico and Cuba and stuff don't have the newest of things built there, so they're kind of more susceptible than other people. But that just goes to show you again what we're always telling you, that you have to help yourself. I mean, it's just overnight darkness. Solar storm causes terrifying blackouts across swaths of the U.S. I would already be okay. We would be fine here. Matter of fact, the nighttime is not even that dark, even if you got rid of all the lights. And maybe it's good for areas to get out of power in this way, where there's not so much death and destruction, because it gives them a chance to turn off the matrix for a little while. I mean, and get back to reality. Um, all these people just instantly are back in reality. And what is that reality? It's that we're soft. Everybody's soft everywhere. They're so used to having lights, machinery, doodads to do stuff. Almost no one knows how to do anything by hand or from scratch anymore. And this gives the people the opportunity to learn what that's like firsthand. Hopefully they'll get their lights back on, though, because I know there's a lot of elderly people that live in Puerto Rico, so they're dependent on air conditioning and things like that. But, this is a good demonstration on a small scale what could happen to the entire planet at any time in the near future. And this was a relatively small one, I think, right? This was only a
Yeah, it was
G4.
only KP7, and that kind of surprises me. You would expect, like I say, if it was some Earth-directed CME, KP9 plus plus, super overcharging, something like in the was it 1987 or the Carrington event, I could expect that, right? But not just a random small one coming off the limb, not even directed at us. Like, see, this is what's happening. The Earth's magnetic field is becoming real weak, and perhaps this is the reason we're seeing so much change because the powers that be understand this is here too. And it's going to be difficult. The more the magnetic field of our planet weakens, the less like a KP5 will come ripping in and cause power outages later on, and then a KP4, and that's just like from C-class flares and normal stuff, right? That's just normal everyday activity from the sun. So imagine then if we were to get a large one, we would get totally blacked out on continents. And that scares a lot of people. So maybe that's why the reset's here. I still cannot get this camera working on Teams. Like, close down all your apps. I don't have anything open barely.
Yeah, I
The
think this
heck?
was not even not even a 7, not even at KP7 right there at the time that the blackout happened in Puerto Rico Island. It was not that
Hmm.
bad. And this kind of goes to show you, imagine if we had like a X48 or something, just or anything higher than that, uh, directly Earth facing. Whoever was facing the sun at that time, whether it was the one side of the planet or the other, when this material hits, lights out, back to the Stone Age, at least for a little while. And what if this was to happen to you? What would you do about it? Like, I heard you had you got a device over there to get going again, right? We're just out here in the desert, and if the batteries don't work, I mean, think about that. You may have backup stuff, but it probably won't work either if it's just out. And I was wondering how many of these lithium ion batteries would just blow up in the right circumstances. Electric cars, all that stuff.
A lot.
Right.
Yeah, that's a terrifying thing too. Imagine if there's such a current override, such an overcharge. Who was I talking to? Lee Wheelbarger, this many years ago. And camera's on now, Ransom. I don't know if you can see me.
Oh, there you are. Let me
Hey,
see.
what's up? Finally figured it out. I had to disassociate and disconnect, reconnected. Welcome to tech. But Leo Barger was telling me many years ago that you would be getting an additional 2 volts per kilometer on top of the high voltage current lines. So you'd have to, in addition, think about what that would also do in the air itself in terms of additional current riding on top of or interacting with. See, that's the whole thing. The electricity wouldn't go through the tires of the vehicle. If it was in the air, as we would say, a more electrified atmosphere during this event, then that would the car itself, the metal would take on an additional charge. And if you got an electric vehicle, that additional charge is also going to be transferred to the wires and then to the battery itself. Now, what's the safety rating on an overcharge or an over amperage or an over voltage of those batteries is a good question. And then again, what would happen with our regular like 12-volt batteries that's in our car to start it? I mean, they'd probably be gone. None of our mowers. I've been having an electrical problem with the mower again this year, trying to chase that down. So, anything. I was thinking anything at all. Batteries of any kind could malfunction. And then we depend on those batteries for all the backups for the electric lights that we have, the backup radios, the ham radios, all these things. And you just really don't know how deep that overcharge is going to permeate down into the atmosphere and then actually through your home and like really if it's tucked way back in and that is sealed off and it's you even have it sort of in a Faraday-ish type of environment, will it really survive? Or I don't know, would you have, because Lee was saying, at that point 2 additional volts per kilometer coming down the lines, you would have sparks coming out of your regular wall sockets. And at that point, then what happens? I mean, then you start to get fires in the homes. And it's well known fact that during the Carrington event in the 1850s, that they had the really old clunky, very large wires for the telegraphs, and sparks were shooting out anywhere from 3 to 6 feet onto the operators that burned several operators and caught their also wooden structures on fire. And that was, a normal that seems to be. And remember, we had that giant event in 1987 with the full power outage across the Northeast U.S. No fires at that time, so they say, but there was an enormous amount of different types of, let's say, like pipeline explosions and substations, transformers exploding, stuff like this that was not expected. Now, our grid's gotten way, way, way sketchier since that time, way less maintained, far less robust. And then we sit in this heightened magnetic field decline time, as well as the sun. Anything it does, it's being more ferocious with less of a bite to it, let's say. So as we walk down, there's an inverse with that. The more the magnetic field collapses on the planet and declines. And now here's the scary thing that they really don't want anybody to know. Before it was 1% per decade, but now it's 5% per decade. And perhaps we've reached some magic point that they realize the cascading is just going to drop off and it's going to go to 10% per decade or 1% per year next year, 2 years, 5 years from now. And at that point, we are going to get into these events that the smallest of events from the sun will have a massive, massive effect on our planet electrically. And how do you hold that together? And more or less, how do you explain it to the populace so they don't absolutely go into panic mode? Like, I really believe a lot of these things we're seeing right now are reflections of and moves of those in the know to structure our society to A, continuity of government, but B, also excuse away everything happening on the planet in terms of disruption in ways that people can understand it. These tariffs are here. Okay, that disrupted shipping. Well, the shipping crisis is next. There's a huge amount of shipping, let's say, delays, and then that will knock on the stock market, and then just follow shipping itself, the amount of oils, repair, parts, crews, and everything that is involved in that. And then you wind back into China, where you should see the images of the ports. I mean, it's like a Himalaya stacked mountain size of containers piling up at the ports. They don't have anywhere to put it. So they're telling the vendors that were in production, please store the containers at your yard or at your loading facility, right out back the factory, whatever. Those are all full too. There's a full shutdown of factories in China right now. They can't produce anymore. A, they're not getting paid. Orders aren't coming. The American orders that are cut, their minimum order quantity to put something into a machine to make it run. Like if you're going to do plastics molding or some sort of extrusion molding, you can't do just a 10% full machine because Europe wants something. They generally tool and adjust this for the American need, African need, and also South American and European needs in one contiguous run. So they'll get orders from, 3-4 continents and then do that run at the time, and then they'll split that off and embarcate it out to where it needs to flow to. That all comes from a single factory, and they're running on a minimum operating quantity, whether it's tonnage or gallons, whatever it might be. Oh, I thought I heard the C-130 coming over. Whatever that minimum is to make that machine, because you can't get a machine to function on nothing. There has to be something in the machine for it to extrude. There has to be pressures behind it. There needs to be a minimum volume of product A into the machine to create product B on the other side of that process. We're not even at the minimum operating potential for most Chinese factories at the moment because the Americans have been cut off. So 50% of most of the goods that were made in China make their way here. With that cutoff, they have been forced to try to resell into China. Now, I was watching the business news in China the last couple of days. Insane things. The Vietnamese and the Thai and a few other Southeast Asian nations are put their last orders in. After these orders are finished, these factories are closing. They're starting to auction off their machinery. The unemployment is going into the tens of millions already of factory workers just laid off in this last week and a half to 2 weeks. Even now, by today, it's like, whoa. So these factories that were fighting for share in America and outside China are now fighting for share within China to sell into an already incredibly razor-thin margin, oversaturated business environment inside the country. So that is their last hope to even stay in business, is try to revert and let you turn all those goods that were going to America to sell them in China. but that would take literally days and it would be saturated. So we sit here at the cusp of Hong Kong has cut off all mail to the United States because they did not want to collect any tariffs. Okay, so anything that was coming out of Hong Kong, post wise, ship wise, air freight wise, none of it's coming. China has effectively cut us off as well. Another thing with farm financing, this is going to hit us here heavily. 1/3 of American beef goes to China and over 1/3 of the hogs. And unbeknownst to me, until I did more research into this, our lumber industry is highly dependent on China. It is cheaper for us to cut the lumber, say somewhere in let's say Washington, Oregon, log in the forests, put it on a ship, send it to China, have them mill it there, send it through the sawmill, pack it and send it back. It is cheaper than doing it here in America. And that's what they're doing. They're logging the forests, putting them on ships, taking them over, cutting it into boards, and then sending it back. Pressure treating over there is way cheaper. Factories are way cheaper. Labor's way cheaper. I could not believe, I shook my head. I was like, that is impossible. But that is the way it's done. Same with some of the pork products. I did not know this either. I thought when the pork outbound went, it went like they cut half hogs. And Smithfield Foods was the big one that I did a few stories on a few years ago. Smithfield Foods just cuts the animal in half, takes the organs out of it, even leaves the head on because they love the pig ear and all that kind of skin and everything. They pack the organs in different boxes and then they send frozen carcasses, half carcasses, over to China to be butchered and then sent back after it's packed from Smithfield Foods into the American market. Can you believe that? So I was wondering why there was such massive trade volumes going both directions, like China imports almost as much as we import in food stuff. So I'm like, that makes no sense. Like, can't we just grow what we need in each of these countries? Like, why do we need to spend, $280 billion going that way in food, but the same $280 billion comes right back to us? And I was like, that something's amiss. So anyway, our farmers are not going to be able to get loans for what they need to continue operating their herds. And this will be with planting also because 50% of all soybeans grown in America go to China. They just cut that off completely as well. So these farmers that are planted, or if they haven't planted yet, because it depends on where you are, like where there are the winter wheat's coming up here. Like there's a huge amount of stuff going on the ground right now here in Tennessee. So, I mean, people are in the process of planting. We're in the middle of April. Like some more northerly latitudes, they're going to wait until May 15th, May 10th, May 1st, whatever. But they've already allotted that. They've already spent the money for that. If they don't get their return on that, they lose their farms. I'm saying that they should not be held responsible for that because those, reciprocal agreements were agreed upon by the governments, and the governments then gave the contracts and gave that specific route for the soybeans going down the Mississippi on a loading barge down to an embarkation point, and it was all through co-ops and government programs to get those soybeans downriver on a ship to China, arranged by our government. That's not them doing it. If they arrange it themselves, I'm sorry, that's your own that's your own fault for making a bad call. But when the government arranges half of the soybean crop of America to be sent to China and China pulls out, none of our farmers should be liable for that. That should be a government bailout. As much as I hate bailouts, this is the only time I really believe it would be necessary. We don't have food if they don't get loans. And if their farms are confiscated or if the farms are taken back by the banks, they're going to go operational for at least a year until the turnover comes in and they put new management, operation, machinery, tooling, seeds, and all that whole everything that goes in that. You just don't get a farm and then like put it into production the first year after it defaults on a loan. Generally, it sits back for a season and then it comes back online when the new ownership takes it over. Sometimes 2 years. So as we sit here, I am absolutely gobsmacked that our entire food production in America right now is in jeopardy. And nobody's talking about it. They're worried about Walmart goods. I'm worried about what's going to happen with our food supply. And I'll leave it there, Ransom. I want to make sure I'm on the right microphone here because it looks like I'm slowing down and my lips aren't syncing with my words. It is insane in the membrane. Isn't it? It's too smooth, man. Yeah, we got no sound over on the Rumble here. I got a couple people writing in saying there's no sound. So then somebody bought us a coffee and said, "Hey, here's two coffees. Oh, go upgrade your equipment." So there we go. Nice. So yeah, thank you for joining us. If you're on Rumble, we're trying to get that set up here. We'll get back to you. Hopefully, we're up on YouTube again here. I wasn't able to. David's sound's back. Okay, Ryan says David's sound is back. Maybe Ransom, your sound's not there, but it seems to be fading in and out. So no, I heard you. I heard you the whole time. So that couldn't have been. That couldn't have been. Oh, it says wasn't just Rumble. All platforms, no sound. Oh. Hmm. Yeah, this integration into Teams here. Yeah, okay, so I got 100% audio from myself, but no audio from Ransom. So somewhere in there's a disconnect on the audio feed. Heading over to the platforms and everybody else out there on YouTube and Rumble, BitChute. Thank you for joining us tonight. This is, if you hadn't known, the Revolution Radio was using, as we all were, Skype to broadcast from as the initiation point. But everything, because Skype shutting down again, I don't know why. At the point they tried to shut down Skype, I think it was because they didn't want people communicating directly with each other without an intermediary as such that they have to go through Teams, right? Because you had to fill in a fair few different agreement policies to be able to use Teams. So that whole being able to call somebody and they didn't really exactly know who you were from Skype, and anywhere in the world you could call somebody on Skype, but this Teams is very, very, very limited unless it's a direct contact. You can't just reach out and call somebody as you could before. There's a lot of limitations to using Teams. And one thing is, I don't know why they tried to stop communication globally by moving everybody over to this system. It worked fine. Skype was great for, 10, 20 years. And then over this last year, they tried to move everybody over into single country subscription model. So like sometimes I call somebody in the UK, but for that, I would have to get a specific subscription just to call the UK. Before you could get, $50 and you could call anywhere on the planet, anytime, any country, and it would just be like a per basis, how much per minute each country cost to contact. But for some reason, they want us all disconnected here back into sort of regional areas. And I think I know why, because they just don't want you to get the truth of being able to contact another individual at simply a quick, I could go on the internet and I could find any company in the world and find their phone number in any, not, I don't care if you're in Ghana or if you're down in Argentina, doesn't matter. I could find the phone number of the business and call them directly through Skype. Now, Teams is super, super limited to be able to call out to anybody. You have to know their contact. They have to be part of your contact. It's just not the way it used to be. So to answer your question there, Ransom, I think North and South America would do fine for their own food production. Australia, to an extent. China, not a chance. They have to import so much. And places like Thailand as well, super touristy area. But when you look down to it, their population would have to be less than half of what it is for them to supply themselves. But then that would be the same. You look at Singapore, there's no way. No way. And there's just not enough food grown in Asia to supply that 2.5 billion mouths there. Not anywhere remotely close. So that's why such a massive amount of food goes into Asia from around the world on a daily basis. In Taiwan, it's even worse. They import 99% of their fuels, and they import something like 98% of the food that they need every day. Because even though 18 million people living on a 300-mile long island, probably enough to feed not 1 million people. So that population would need to decline 18 times to get it down to the carrying capacity of where it is. So if China were to siege they wouldn't have to invade. All they have to do is like stop supplies from coming in. They would last 2 weeks under. So these countries that would, if we come into it where it gets in a regionalized basis, United States will be fine for food, not for other things, for food. South America will be fine for food. Europe, they're struggling already with a lot of crop losses and the whole communist politic thing there. I don't think they have enough. It would be overseen by the state, no different than Russia had done in the Holodomor or something like this. There would be bad countries that would be roped off, not allowed to have food. Africa might do okay because it depends on, it's such a large continent. Well, you have no idea. You could put almost 3 lower 48 continental United States Americas inside Africa. Probably more. I think it's almost 4 Americas inside Africa. Like, it's deceiving on the globe as how big it is. We talked about this a million times before. But see, this technology thing, at the same time we're coming into the shift here, you got to realize that the thing that's changing is not just our world with the monetary system. That's just one part of it. The entire introduction of the new artificial intelligence economy is being inserted at the same time. It's great we have computers. I love working online. I'm super happy the freedom it gave me. But that whole genre of what was is now being replaced with the new AI economy. Now realize that as I was talking about food growing and the transition of farms that would go into, let's say, repossession because they could not pay off their farm loans due to non-selling of products to China, that integration and the new ownership will be AI at its base. And this is where it comes in. Anything that ceases or changes ownership into, let's say, more the BlackRock-ish, Fidelity, JP Morgan-ish ecosystem, it's all being digitized and it's all going artificial intelligence. It's all going smart contract. The usage and the need for humans on an assembly line or something is out the door. We don't need that anymore. I mean, the plans I saw for the 2025 to 2050 initiative following on top of the Lima Declaration, it's all AI and it's all 3D printing on demand. So the substitution and integration of our regular tech, which you can understand like NVIDIA and these sort of chip makers and semiconductor and computers and Apple and all these things, it's going to move forward a little bit and it's absolutely going to transition. The whole movement of the entire new world is a movement to an AI integrated new economy. So it was like the Mag 7. Well, there's probably going to be like a magnificent AI 9 or 10 or 12. And that will overtake and integrate into itself the Mag 7s that you're seeing right now. What will be our future is not going to be this tech world that we live in. It is going to be upgraded to an artificial intelligence world run by AI, maintained by humans to a point, but I've seen some insane videos where robots are able to, get this, 3D, have a 3D printing facility, print the parts they need, and then go repair the robots themselves, the other humanoids, shall we say, artificial intelligent humanoids, in a certain basic fashion right now. Now, I don't know about the wiring and the circuitry, but actual like hard parts like nuts, bolts, Ryan would know way better with the XYZ axis on the elbow arms and things. They're able to repair that. So Ryan, send a note if you know what the proper terminology is for that. The world as we know is, it's in a shift at the moment. So this whole base of the stable coin, like United States and the allies of the US are going to be going to a stable coin standard. And the rest of the world is moving over onto the BRICS payment rails. And in the middle of that is the ISO 20022 token issuance that is going to be on-demand liquidity and settlement on a distributed ledger. And everything else that comes in that form of how you use credit cards or pay, it's all being digitized. Like Visa, MasterCard, they're swinging over into cryptocurrency at the moment. And the thing I remember way back was a crypto.com. You were able to upload, they were the very first one that did it. They integrated with Visa and MasterCard, and then there was some lawsuits, so they just pulled back to MasterCard. You were able to upload your crypto in there. Let's say you had Bitcoin or Litecoin, and they were only ran with a couple, 2 or 3 of them, but I remember Bitcoin and Litecoin. And then you would spend it, and it would do the calculation and the transfer for you from how much Bitcoin is worth this much price, and then it would pay for your item. But if you deposited, let's say, Bitcoin way back then, and it was worth, 15,000, and it went up to 25,000, you were charged capital gains tax of 40% on every purchase that you used for that on crypto.com on their credit card. So it wasn't that you pay like a 5% fee to use that to transfer your crypto over. It was actually 45% if you were in the positive. If you were in the black for your crypto trade on that, the US government was requiring crypto.com to withhold that 40% of that as an overcharge for your capital gain, because they knew you wouldn't do it on your own. So this brings us right back to the ecosystem again. Like, if they start to integrate, I mean, are we going to get capital gains tax every time we swipe our credit cards? Because I'm telling you right now, anything that you buy in crypto is going to be way hella more valuable in a couple of years than it is now. Not financial advice, but they haven't even integrated this into the new world's global payment systems yet. And these things are at $1, $2, 3, 50 cents, 20 cents, whatever. They're cents, pennies. I remember when Ethereum was $5, and that thing rocketed to 4,000. So imagine doing the same thing now, and then you're trying to spend out on a crypto credit card. Well, you went from $5 to 4,000. Thank you. I need your capital gains at 40%. This world we're moving into is going to be something entirely different than we're used to. This is why you have to have the real ID. This is why they're coming to the facial recognition, this drip feed of real ID, yellow star, which is interesting and almost in your face, like a yellow star on your driver's license. Don't you remember the yellow stars in World War II on the prisoners? Yeah, isn't that interesting how those things are exactly the same, which is scary, by the way. And then suddenly, a couple of years after that, it's going to be full facial recognition to move through an airport. We are just literally years away from adopting the same Chinese social credit score integrated with AI overseership and your cryptocurrency. Everything is going to be, see, here's the whole thing. Once they move everything into this, whatever this hodgepodge after our current world morphs, I don't know if collapse is quite the right word to use. A morphing into a new sort of substance from what it is now is the best way to term it. Once that occurs, without the need for humans everywhere, UBI will come in, universal basic income. So they'll give you money so you don't riot on the street. They'll give you money so you can exist. They probably won't give you enough money to pay the mortgage on your house, which means you're going to own nothing. They're going to have to do something with all the humans on the planet. They're going to be some unruly ones. This is why like in China, you have to show your face before you can get on the internet. Like, every time you sign in, instead of even putting a password in, you have to face scan. All right, so they know exactly who you are, what comments you left, what you did. Okay, so Ryan wrote me back. It says robotic manufacturing basically already to go. The limiting factors were vision systems and advanced programming using AI to adapt to unforeseen circumstances. AI does not do micro adjustments instead of maintenance crew. Beyond that, it's all price point. Companies need to feel a sense of stability to make 10-year investments in terms of ability. We can automate all manufacturing right this second. So again, if we're coming into a new monetary system, then what is considered value will absolutely change, and boom. All right, so Taco Banana, thank you for buying us a double espresso here. No audio, guys. Okay, we got the audio back, so thank you for sticking with us. This is an interesting point here. Thank you for bringing it up, Taco Banana. I have been seeing because I used to work in China, so I still very much follow the news all through Asia. News, business programs, I still follow all of it all the time. Right, because it is where the world is shifting from. out back to the rest of the world, right? It is the seed point of that is a test technology bed, and it is working its way back out. So if you want to know what America is going to be like, look in China, look in Singapore, look in Malaysia, and look how they control the citizens and how tight it is. That is the plan for the world, always has been, especially 2025 to 2050. This is the big one, right? We're coming into it. All right, so there's been a bunch. I know I'm rambling, so let me ramble for a second. Now, see, Taco Banana says, I'm also hearing that China really now only has about 400 million people. I have seen an enormous amount of video after video of them dynamiting full buildings and just taking down full apartment complexes, not by one or two, but entire blocks, entire kilometers, square kilometers of housing just being demolitioned. Boom, there's no need for it anymore. A, to raise the price, but B, there's no need for it anymore. And I'm thinking, their whole thing was expansion into these homes to try to grow the real estate, and they were going to give all these kids that couldn't get it. A government was going to help them get some down payment loans in addition to what the parents can give, and they were trying to get all the younger unruly kids homes now, because it was going to take them 16 years or something ridiculous just to even get like a roach motel somewhere in the middle of a terrible part of the city, like underwater, kind of flooding, kind of nasty, and it would take you 16 years to even afford to get that. Just for the down payment to save up 16 years to live into a flooded roach motel. All right, so government was going to help them because they knew there's already a problem. But then I've also been seeing several videos, I mean, not several, but dozens, hundreds of, there's nobody on the streets there. Because I do remember in COVID, they were very, very hard-handed. They just like welded people in their buildings. They starved to death. They had these special like spiral, you know, when you go to a construction work site and they have the chute that comes down and like bricks and things, and it comes into a centralized place, and maybe it's on the ground or maybe it's in some sort of bin or whatever that can come down from 3, 4, 5 floors and slide into a place. Well, they had specialized ones. Instead of letting the body go straight down at super velocity, it kind of spun like a water park swirly slide. And these things were extendable off trucks, and they were going up 5, 6, 8 floors, and they were just taking the bodies out of the apartments and putting them in one after another, one after another. That's because they locked everybody in their apartments. You had enough food, don't care. Had enough water, don't care. And I heard also there was political retribution going on where if there was an enemy of the state, politically or economically, they locked the entire apartment building in and let everybody starve to death. That's the measures they went to, at least during the COVID, that it got that nasty and that hard-handed. And you saw all those pictures. They just roped people in an entire apartment complexes and put up those giant steel fences. Nobody in or out, no food in or out, nothing in or out. All those people died. So then, you see in those extendable swirly slides, and then, those were all tightly controlled. There's a few that made it out, and there's some people who smuggle videos out and whatever on micro or on the SD cards and stuff. Seeing that's 400 million people, these videos coming out are like, hey man, this place used to be like a crazy busy intersection at rush hour. And now, look, there's hardly anybody around. These videos themselves are now being suppressed or illegal to release out, and people are being arrested for releasing those videos, showing that there's nobody there. Very few people. They're looking down big giant streets of what used to be bustling shopping malls and bustling stores, and the commentary is like, all the stores are closed. This used to be a bank over here. This used to be a workout, like a gym, and this used to be a dental office, and this used to be this, and there's nothing here anymore. And you look down, it's like, what it reminds me of is the Tartaria stuff. When you see those pictures of the Tartaria, some wide view or whatever, and you look and there's 0 people on the streets. I mean, for China, there's still some people don't get me wrong, but I mean, it's not like it was. Shit, I was there, man. It was so busy. Oh my gosh, you've never seen so many people in one place in your life, all moving, kind of in unison. It was a symphony of just like absolute packed humanity moving in and out. And now these videos that I see, I go, that's impossible. They got to be. They're just in a weird part of the city or something. Originally, I thought they were just in a weird part of the city or some kind of like super far thing, or they didn't open yet, or what. There are so many vids coming out, and the commentary coming out of that place too is like, yeah, there's far less people in this area. So they're trying to explain it away like these people during COVID couldn't find work, so they all jammed back to their countryside homes with their, hometowns way back out in the countryside. So the city's emptied out. But you go into the countrysides and it's even more of a ghost town out there. There's even less people out there. So I don't know what happened with the full population of China. That's a good one, though, Taco Banana. I have been talking way too long. I got to let Ransom. Ransom, have you been hearing anything about a lowering population in China? Because that would make sense with all this tariff stuff and all this blowback into America, and they don't care about the food and they can cut off the food. Because if they don't have over 1 billion people to feed, then it's all theater, kabuki theater that we're seeing. Because they're like, we don't need your food, man. Take it back, whatever. And it's like, we're big, tough China. Hey, we're going to cut the soybeans. We're going to cut the beef. We're going to cut the pork. Well, what if they just don't need it? And that's their excuse. That's their excuse. Now, you wouldn't want to spook people, because if people really saw that and go, holy smokes, it dropped from 1.4 billion to 400 million. Dude, that's a 1 billion person loss. Where'd they all go? What'd they all die of? That's a lot of body cleanup, you know what I mean? But they were talking about those furnaces churning like IMs to the point where they broke. They were trying to cremate so many people during COVID over there. Again, political enemies, economic enemies, entire apartment buildings, people welded in. I mean, you saw that crazy stuff that went on over there. And then the body cleanup and the hazmat suits after all that stuff, sending them down the chutes and everything. I mean, there's something significantly going on here. And I'm just wondering in the United States, too, like truly, how many people are not here anymore because of choices that were made to keep their jobs? People that are not functional right now because they're so continuously ill. Is traffic less? Well, maybe not on I-75, but I mean, when you go around certain areas, are there just less people? Are you seeing it around here too? Is there less people around in your towns and cities? I guess it's a question for everybody listening. Ransom, please. I'm sorry, man. I'm gonna just sip on my wine while you follow up, if you could.
Can you hear me now?
I can, man. I can.
I think what happened is the feed to the broadcast, somehow I was muted, but you could hear me on the radio. Well, the break's there. Maybe we'll get into that when we get back.
Oh, it is the break. Hey, Joe Burbine, thank you for buying us a double espresso. Have you heard about the tsunami that's supposed to hit Japan in 2025? No. Woman also having a prophecy for the 2011 one that hit around Fukushima.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Technology.
There are few things you can count on in a major disaster. Having your water supply cut off is one of them. With the Alexa Pure Emergency Water Bank, you'll have months of drinking water in your home. Everyone else will stand in line waiting to get just a few bottles. It's one of the easiest, most affordable ways to store emergency water, and it takes up hardly any space. The Alexa Pure Emergency Water Bank includes 1 BPA-free liner, comes with a siphon pump for extracting water, provides easy-to-follow instructions, fits just about any bathtub, large or small, fills quickly in 30 minutes or less, holds up to 65 gallons of water, and keeps water fresh for up to 16 weeks, holds about 2 months of water for one person. A person can generally survive without water for about 3 days. However, the exact amount of time depends on many factors, including age, activity level, and overall health. Don't gamble with your life and well-being. Being prepared is easier than ever with Civilization Cycle and Alexa Pure.
Our Grid Doctor 3300 has been upgraded to include EMP Intercept technology. Our built-in Grid Doctor technology incorporates industrial-grade components to safely protect the Grid Doctor 3300 and keep it operating in those dangerous times. EMP Intercept technology has been designed to exceed U.S. military requirements for a high-altitude nuclear detonation that results in an electrical magnetic pulse. This protection also covers lightning strikes, grid surges, coronal mass ejections, solar flares, and phases E1, E2, and E3 of an electromagnetic pulse.
New York City in the early morning, after a night of no electric power, and so no lights, elevators, subway trains, or any trains, airports, air conditioning, traffic signals, television. What it did have in the dark streets was a wild outburst of crime. Arson, looting, mugging, and 1,000 false fire alarms.
Never get left out in the cold. There is never a reason to ever let you or your family suffer. Instafire and Civilization Cycle are on a mission to make fire starting and off-grid living easy for everyone. You shouldn't have to be a mountain man to strike a flame and make a fire anytime, anywhere.
And we're back. Unfortunately, they got some kind of weird time limit thing on this, so we got to wait to be added back to the radio call. So hopefully everybody can hear me now, though. Weird. Let's see here. Let's check in on the chat. Yeah, better what intermissions are for. Right. So you guys can hear me. Check, check. Anyway, let's see here. We're waiting on the call. Or it's not here. Anyway, you guys wanted to hear about this. What I was talking about here was, well, I'll wait for David to get back on, and we'll just start over that whole thought process here on Thursday night. Civilization cycles, where the resets happen every week. Let's see here. I do not see the call. There we are. All right, dismiss. Did you guys see the new robot guy? Let me find him. Of course, everything's going haywire now. Sweet. Here it is. I am the law. World's first true RoboCop. Unveiled as Cop Deploy Cyborg 1.0 with facial recognition and a 360-degree camera for eyes. But what's this thing gonna do in a storm? All right, and we're back.
And we're reconnected. Yeah. So how many times are we going to get forced into the subscription model? Hey, man, thanks for joining me back. You know, I'm just having one of those days, bro. I've been running since like 6:30 this morning, straight like a squirrel on a squirrel on meth running through the hamster wheel, man. I'm trying to get a bunch of stuff done, and then I came screaming in here for our video for the evening. All right, camera on. Bam, here we go. All right, thank you for everybody waiting out there in Radio Land. Ransom's going to take us through here. I did the introduction. Revolution Radio, thank you for letting us, through the ideas here. It's super important that we are able to compare information right now. And that's the whole thing. It seems like the ability for us as just a global populace to communicate is being throttled at the moment on purpose. And as we come into this financial contagion, everything's on a subscription model. So how many times are you able to pay $10 for this, $20 for this, $50 for this, $70 for this per year before people are like, I don't need that anymore? You know, they're trying to cut lines of communication. I'm absolutely sure of it. Give it another year or two, and this teams might not even be functioning because they won't want us to communicate. Because I am really wanting to know what's happening in Asia. I sent some feelers out to people I used to work with, and I'm still waiting to hear back. Xiamen, Shenzhen, Hong Kong. I want to know what's happening over there, so I sent a bunch of inquiries, and I'm still waiting I haven't heard anything back. So again, if I would have had something other than a US phone to be able to like Skype, just call right over in there. I still could call China. It's monitored, obviously, but that's okay. As long as you're not going off the rails on it. Anyway, Ransom, please respond to anything I'd said. And also thank you for anybody buying us a coffee out here on buymeacoffee.com/civilization cycle. We had another super chat come in, so please allow me to hit that one up. Oh yeah, Joe Borbreen, before we went on the break. Ransom, I'll ask you the question. Have you heard of a prophecy of a tsunami coming in to hit Japan in July 2025? The same woman that had talked about the prophecy for an earthquake in 2011 that hit Fukushima. And Brandon Biggs say December 2024 was saying that all American shelves will be empty. There's cobwebs all over them, and America will go into an absolute, complete nightmarish shutdown. So any of those take it away, man. My throat hurts.
Well, I don't know about the prophecy, but I have read several papers that were talking about an increase in volcanic and geologic activity on the Ring of Fire. And they did predict that sometime this year or next year that they would have a 9.0 or even like an 8 or anything like that. So, yeah, of course, that would cause a massive tsunami like it did in 2011 that messed up the Fukushima thing. And you know what you were saying about China, we might get banned for this episode there. So I don't know. I don't know if that's okay to talk about now that it's history. But I think that there would be a lot more information out there if 500 million people disappeared. But I think they could get away with covering up maybe 250 million people because they would be mostly elderly and yeah, that whole concept of massive amounts of people gone. And the only way we're going to really know that is if people start, looking at the census numbers, which of course is going to be a big space and it's not going to zero down exactly which year the population went down. But that all fits into what we've been talking about. There's plenty of people out there predicting the population plateau followed by a dramatic decrease in population. And I always point that out and make sure I say that has nothing to do with war, famine, emergencies, catastrophes, anything. That's just basic math on the amount of people having children, growing old, dying, and the people that are left here. But there are
the Deagle numbers too, right? The Deagle.
Yeah, well, they're trying to predict additional triggers to that population decline. So if you want to believe them, that we could be in a mess. And everybody wanted to know what I was talking about, I guess when I was mute. And basically it goes to what he was talking about, AI running everything. Let me see if I got this on screen here. I'm supposed to share my face. So you guys already saw the articles. So this one right here, not that one. What tonight? I don't know. Anyway, can AI be creative? Well, I think it's going to be, and that's what they're trying to make happen, actually, is creative AI. And, I forgot an example when we were muted. So in the past 2 weeks, we've had articles, headlines about AI psychiatric help So you can go to get your AI psychiatric help that can tell you how to deal with any of these, fears that you might have in the transition of society. But now we got AI lawyers, AI snitches for cops, undercover protesters. Nothing is real, but that's just in time for the transition of a new form of information. And what I'm talking about there is stuff like this. The National Weather Service is going to stop its coverage. So I was kind of predicting that there would be some nasty storms right about then. It's because people are so dependent now on the new types of information. And another one of these articles I was looking at is talking about TV going the way of newspapers. But it all lines up just in time for this transition where everything is being replaced as far as how you learn or obtain information. And so you got customer service, you got lawyers, you got therapists, you got AI doctors, you have now AI fake protesters and undercover police trying to bust people in the social media networks for probably in the future will be wrongthink, saying the wrong things, noticing the wrong things, or maybe watching videos that you're not supposed to talk about, because we see those all the time. Actually, the whole idea of the show that I had originally in 2016, I can't even do that show now because every topic is off limits. Every topic can get me in trouble. You can't talk about diseases. You have, even if you have a PhD and you're a worldwide known scientist in a topic like climate or disease or medicines, if you're not with the status quo or the system, then you can be banned, silenced still to this day, even with this new supposed free speech, even on Twitter. But even Elon Musk said you can have free speech, but not freedom of reach. In other words, they're still allowing AI and algorithms to decide what information leaks through to us poor peons right here. But I thought it was laughable. I was showing them the RoboCop.
Oh, wait, Ransom, could we talk about the Little Rascals or show Little Rascals reruns on our channel?
I don't know. That's kind of outdated. There's some.
It's outdated, but the kids were having fun. They sent the message of it doesn't matter what socioeconomic background you're from, what color your skin is. Kids are kids. They play together. They had fun. So many adventures. Huckleberry Finn, Tom Sawyer kind, still running around in the Great Depression era.
Oh,
that was fun. That was good TV. And now it's like, like I say, it's banned. It's old school. You can't talk. Oh, you did too many rude jokes like that. You can't talk like that. Those kids.
Well, you can't teach new kids that there was a time in the U.S. that was supposed to be bad, but yet they were still airing, shows with little poor kids all hanging out together of different ethnicities and colors, and rich kids and poor kids all playing. They had adventures,
all playing together.
But that's supposed to be back then, when America was bad, when we made everything, when we gardened and everybody was inventing stuff and trying new ways of living. And we're about to do that again, except for it's being given to us spoon-fed by, I don't even know if it's human. I really don't at this point because you can't believe anything. I'm watching videos and I'm seeing really smart people falling for artificial videos that are made by AI, and they think they're real. And I don't blame them. And we kind of got started joking around with our little commercials a couple years ago. I was making stuff. Now imagine if we dumped $100,000 into that and made a whole production. We could make things that are not real. So, everybody's debating whether or not those women in the, what is it? The Bezos spaceship really even went to space. Could you create that with AI? Well, yes, you could. You could. It's very easy to do that. I think they did. People are forgetting that this didn't go up that high. It barely made it up in the atmosphere, and they got a good angle of the Earth and whatever. But it wasn't like the SpaceX module that had a re-entry at a high rate of speed, and that's why that one looks like it's burnt to a crisp versus the other one that was lightly dropped back to the Earth. And they didn't go much higher than airplanes go. Some of the, scientific airplanes, military airplanes go up that high all the time. They didn't actually go into space per se. So I don't blame people for thinking that things are fake, because some things are fake. And now we're talking about all of the little safety nets in society are being handed over to an artificial, not only system, but can it be creative, or is there some guy, the guy behind the curtain, the Wizard of Oz, back there behind the curtain programming everything? But think about it. If we're now having AI attorneys, how long into the future before everybody that gets charged with the crime is just given, you can't afford an attorney? Here's you an AI that'll represent you. And then who programs it and how good is it? Because, I read AI articles all the time, and my son looks up stuff on the phone for me. I'll be like, hey, look up this real quick. And he'll be like, well, here's the AI overview. And he reads it to me, and I'm like, that don't sound right. So we do a little more research, and I tell him, nah, that don't sound right. So we look it up. I'm right. The AI's wrong. I don't know why it's saying that. So what happens when people trust the AI more than they trust their own eyes or classic books? What if they think the books are lying because they're all outdated, racist, they're xenophobic, they're whatever it is that the label gets put on it, and then people have to trust this new version of AI? Everything. The doctor that's giving you your heart transplant, the therapist that helps you deal with it afterwards, your attorney. And then I showed that article now. The government is now implementing fake people to infiltrate groups and circles. And, that's really scary if you look back at some of the FBI operations of the near past and what the truth is behind that. Like, how are we going to have like some kind of attack, and then when they find out all the players are actually not real people, they're all artificial people that baited or manipulated some kid on Discord or Reddit or whatever it is? We really don't know how that's going to affect people, especially in the past 20 years when you've seen, kids doing bad things to themselves because kids at school said a mean word to them. And then you have this social engineering that teaches people to be a victim. What happens when the bully is not even a real person? What if the bully is just an AI designed to make you make certain decisions and go with social trends that were completely invented? And now we know our stocks, our news, some of the speeches by our world leaders, television programs, news programs. And when it says, will TV go the way of the newspaper, they mean how all of these newspapers went out of business. But what if TV actually goes the way of AI written articles? And we've already seen that on, like Netflix. If you've seen that movie Bright, written by an AI, directed by an AI, basically. They had some guy in and direct a movie that was completely made up in artificial land. And it seemed like what it did is give you everything the algorithm thought you wanted to hear. So it had everything in there from, elves and orcs and bikers and police. Like, it mushed a bunch of movies together. Now just imagine that all your news feed, and not only that, think about this. Your child's learning, which is most of the toddlers and little kids are not being taught by people anymore. They're on little, screens looking at stuff that may or may not even be created by humans.
And I do see this book here. Anybody can see that. It is ancient and medieval history. This book is from 1939. I picked it up in an estate sale for like
That's
$1 or
hate speech.
$2.
That's pre-World War II. You can't read that.
Hey man. So then they have the Athenian Acropolis right here for anybody interested to look at the picture of the Athenian Acropolis. And you can compare that to way they talk about Greeks creating a new society. And then, I'm just flicking through while I was waiting for you to come back. This is all about glass making in the 1400s. Now, wait a minute. We weren't supposed to be making glass in the 1400s. What are you talking about? Like, come on, man. The purity of the glass rivals anything that we have today, according to this here. least with the colored glass and the stained glass, is that we're even more pure than what we consider of white pure glass that we have in our windows today. They were producing colored glass at that time that was more clear than the what we consider just clear opaque glass of today. Now, this takes us back into the 1400s for that type of 15th century glass making. That isn't taught to us in this book. It's quite, I wanted to do a bunch of scans for my Patreon people here and some of the good stuff that's in there. And they were talking about antiquities. I'm always looking for Tartarian remnants in this stuff. Like here's a Teutonic Knight's castle, and then you could try to compare that with, what they might have shown anywhere, because that castle's pretty nice right there. Compared to photos of renditions of things. And I'm always looking for, different remnants of what was compared to what is now. So I would compare this photo that was taken in the castle was built in the 1400s. This photo was obviously taken somewhere around like 1920 or so or earlier. And then take a look at what it looks like now, and then especially surrounding it when they remove a lot of mud and rock and that sort of thing, because a lot of this stuff has mud flood fingerprints all over it, global liquefaction event fingerprints all over it. And this is a very incredible looking building. You're looking at it, wow, that thing was, what is that? The Bohemian period. So there's a lot of our hidden history, and you could still find books like this, but I would agree with you, Ransom. Like, this is verboten. Anything that's not scrubbed from history, and I love going back into the early 1900s or late 1800s books, and I have several of those also. The older you go back, the more interesting. Yeah, look at that. I mean, these kind of books, you can tell it's an old one just by the hardcover and like the rustic look of this thing. You just know that's an old one, right?
This one's a reprint in 1920 of a history book from 1904. It's Ancient History, Myers. Nothing has been changed in I don't know how to put that. There's nothing been changed for people's feelings in it. It's all pre-World War I history and the way they thought about the world then. So it talks about peoples with their old names, and it does mention the Tartarian Empire in it as a whole group, a section of history that involves Euro-Asian history. And it refers to people by their old names, which, today you're not allowed to do that. Everything has a new twist on it, a politically correct history. And I would suggest that somebody get a book like this and then go read some events in that book and then compare it to I'm going to say post-World War II, but even further than that, maybe post-2000s history book. And you're going to find out that there's some very different stories going on.
Yeah, this one here, the sacred geometry on the cover, this is the lost history of Europe, the lost art of Europe. 1946, this one. Lost Treasures of Europe, 1946. And this thing has an enormous 400 and some photographs in it. And it goes through all the cathedrals and everything. And I would encourage you to compare what we have today with what is in these books here, and what had been bombed during the war or saved, and then here's some bombing from England where they took out a few bridges and this sort of stuff. What these castles look like pre and post now, because there's been an enormous amount of disappeared history. But I mean, I collect this kind of stuff. People think I'm a little weird because I'm always going through dusty books and things. But how do we really know what our history is? What's been taken from us? I mean, I don't care if there's an EMP or not. This thing stays with me. And then the whole sacred geometry on the front of the book's pretty interesting, too. That's what caught my eye on this one.
Right.
But then I compare this to the actual buildings. And again, it doesn't take long to find these things referenced in there. And sometimes on the end of the pages, you'll find that there'll be a motif or something on it. But, just the architecture and the old school world that we had that disappeared. Like, for example, on the top of all these cathedrals, these are all stripped off now. And I do believe that these were the electrical conduits that were harvesting the etheric atmospheric energies off of that. But these were the ones that were pre-World War II that were still intact before they ripped all the stuff off that would be the antiquitech, for a better term. But you're never going to find that really on the net. I mean, even to find these photos from this book scanned and onto the internet would be difficult at best. And unless I hired somebody and said, hey, scan this book and we'll put them out picture by picture up onto a blog post or something to make sure this stuff gets up on the net. But how long before, the website goes down or something like this, and then that disappears in the digital form?
I was just wondering here, when I'm looking at that book, it says modern history, and it's talking about up into the or I guess the 20th century, the turn of the century there. And the whole world view is different. And it's funny because they're not afraid to write things at that time. They just, but I do keep in mind that if today's news isn't as true as it should be, imagine what some of the stuff that they left out of these history books because of dogma at their times. So it's like you have to study every single era of history in their own words and then put it into context to remember that they all had their own agendas. They all had their own dogmas. But those pictures you were showing of those buildings are the last remnants of the secret schools that the public could look at and see. And that's why when you go to some of the places that are still there, they incorporate sacred geometry and certain numbers, all kinds of ideas from like the Holy Grail idea of DNA, all the way to, people arguing whether or not they're depicting corn, that they weren't supposed to have. All kinds of weird stuff like that you find in comparison. And now we're barely getting to admit that there was transatlantic migrations prior to the end of the Pleistocene. So people were all over the place. So we know that they're leaving things in places there shouldn't be. Just the idea of the tuber or the potato that comes out of Peru. You find it all over the world. Chilies that come from the Central Valley in Mexico are found all the way in Asia. How did they get there? It's because people were trading back and forth for thousands of years, and they have stuff all over the place. So when I'm going through the articles, I think about these same things. We're getting into this era where they're telling you, we're not going to be giving you news and information like we used to. And then the idea that it's all digital now, so it can be turned off at any time. Just like these poor people right here in Puerto Rico. A minor geomagnetic storm and 1.4 million people are put into the dark ages right there. And we're close to that at any place. Matter of fact, today I went outside and it was so windy and so dusty that I could look directly at the sun. It was just dim white sun. I could look directly at it. That you just imagine, we're not even having storms or anything, and there's 80-mile-an-hour winds blowing dust and knocking stuff over. So you could just imagine you add a little water to that and lights out. I've actually had the experience to be in an ice storm that was, I think it was about 2001 or 2002. I was in Arkansas, and I mean everything was covered in about an inch, or not an inch, about a half an inch of ice. And within the night, there were people on four-wheelers robbing stuff, breaking into stuff. There was no law enforcement response. They couldn't. They were ill-prepared. They didn't have vehicles that could go anywhere, despite having four-wheel drive and different stuff. It was complete bedlam, and every man for himself in one night. So you imagine if that lasted for weeks or months. I noticed that not much news is still coming out of places that were devastated by that hurricane. I mean, I guess it had media exhaustion from everybody looking at it, but I'm wondering, how are they doing now? What about all those unanswered questions? How many people did disappear? What about all the stories of, individuals that were here and there and everywhere? Where did they come from? Who were they? What happened to them? You don't hear that stuff. We just move on with the news cycle, and people are so entranced with this digital feed that they have that it's hard for them to break free. And I think maybe...
You're talking about North Carolina, are you?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, there's been a few new news articles, because I'm right here in that neck of the woods. The flood claims, catastrophic flood insurance was denied for almost everybody unanimously because the water was moving. Catastrophic flood insurance was only when an area floods and it kind of comes up from the bottom and it's not moving flowing water, that it actually comes into a pooling area and then comes up. That's catastrophic flood. But coming down from the mountain the way it did, and once in a 2,000-year flood event, since the water was rushing and moving in a torrent-like fashion versus a flood fashion, again, you're splitting the hairs. So almost every single claim was denied. Almost every claim was denied. And Ransom, could I show you another book here?
Yeah.
So we got the classic myths here. Classic myth book.
There's where all your
so this is a goodie, and this is the reprint version. The original, the reprint 1911. This is from 1911. The first edition was 1893. So again, check out some of the images in here, and they're also talking about Jupiter and stuff. This is the creation myth here of. Let me see. Let me read back to you. The Greek myths of the creation, the reign of Jupiter. So let me just read you the second. New conflicts, however, awaited this new dynasty of heaven. Conflicts, the subject many of a tale among the ancients. Gaia, or Gaia, though she had aided her grandson Jupiter in the war against Kronos, was soon seized with the companions of co-science and contemplating the cruel fate of her sons, the Titans. She conceived schemes of vengeance upon their conqueror. Again, that sounds very much like lightning bolts, between planets and this sort of thing to explain away. Another son was born to her, Typhon, Typhon, a monster more awful than his predecessors, though whose dynasty it was to dispute the sway of the almighty Zeus. Again, that sounds like interference of a bolt from the heavens there. From the neck of Typhon dispread themselves 100 dragon heads. Again, that would be plasma discharge. The eyes shot fire, and from his blackened tongue chaps proceeded of hissing snakes, the bellowing of bulls, the roarings of lions, the barking of dogs, the pipings, the screams, the utterances of the gods themselves. That sounds like a lightning bolt from the sky. And imagine all the sounds and the rifting and like the tearing of the magnetic field. That describes exactly what we're about to experience right now. Just thought I'd bring that to you. Anyway, the books are the way to go. Like these older books, I mean, these are tales and myths that are coming from the late 1800s of the way they interpreted history of like the oldest of myths and legends. The myths of the great divinities of heaven. And here, I'll show you another one. You got Anubis of sorts there coming in on this one. Like these are lithographs you just never find anywhere ever. Something like this. I mean, I need to scan all this. I think I need to scan this a little more now that I found these once again and brought them to attention and to myself.
Think about, we're talking about this reset. So what happens after the reset? You're going to have oral traditions, people finding books and stuff like that. If it was massive enough, like say we lost the internet, access to the internet, for any portion of time, immediately there's going to be people telling their children how it was, what happened. And then after a while, that stuff gets distorted. And I kind of want to point this out right here. This is, if I can get it up. This is where we're at right now. So this is one of the, and I'm not going to get deep into it, but there's a people there that they don't have no more money. So things are about to change. And then you have over here, a lot of people are worshiping at a specific spot that they were trying to keep a balance of before. And the reason this is important is where it's at. It's on the mount. And I'll kind of stop there. But my point being, things are going to happen there. And in a few hundred years, the story of what happened will be equal to these myths. And the reason I'm connecting that is what you were just talking about, that Greek mythology. We know that comes from the same place that the Hebrew also got some of their mythology from. And we know that because the Phoenician alphabet is identical to the first alphabet used by the Greeks. They literally were given it by them. And at the same time, you have the Hebrew that are using that same alphabet before Proto Hebrew. They were using that same alphabet. And then we find that same alphabet in all of the Druidic ruins, Germanic ruins to the north. It's literally the same alphabet. And then you have similar stories all coming out of there. So you got Zeus down there, you got Thor up north. Thor came from the south. That's his story. He came from there. So we know that these are all intertwined. And here in the near future, we may have some historical events that those old stories are finally going to come and they're going to give you the ending. And what I mean by that is there's billions of people that believe in certain ideas that revolve around that specific spot. And if something were happen that destroyed the building that is currently there, undoubtedly the nation that owns the property there will start building a new building, which people believe is going to happen. And that will be their sign to accept the reset. They'll have to. Their dogma demands it. And then, God knows what they'll write about it in the future, because like I said, I wonder when I'm reading these historical events, how much is propaganda? Because like I know for a fact that when the Hyksos were invading the Egyptians, they would put up stone pillars that said they were winning. They were winning the war despite losing territory over and over again. And then they would say, the great pharaohs are beating the Hyksos, but the Hyksos were actually taking over almost all of their lands. But yet, like Baghdad Bob, they kept saying they were winning. Or like the guy from the German ministry there that was telling its citizens, we're winning the war, don't worry about it, until the bombs start falling on the TV station of today. It's hard to believe anything from any side of it, because it's so much propaganda and dogma. But now we're going into this era where the artificial decides what the dogma is, and the artificial gets to tell you about it. So, when you're talking to somebody on the street, it's so funny because if you get to a point of disagreement, they're going to go to their phone and they're going to find their facts from their news sites with the articles that they agree with, despite anything else on the internet. So who's the arbiter of what's true? And I think that was all done on purpose, specifically so the governments of the world could put AI in control of that and stop dissenting ideas. Now, at which point are we going to get to where they will implement it fully, where you can't argue with it? Like right now, there's a thing in the Western world. They're trying to pass these laws that limit anti-Semitic speech. Now, the problem with that is they have one people in mind when they're making that law, but those people are not the only Semitic people. So if you live in a country where you have a lot of migrants from specific areas, they're Semitic. And you may not be able to say anything about them because you agreed to limit your own speech about a different group of people. I don't know if that makes sense. I didn't want to get too specific, but there are more than one kind of Semitic people, and in different countries, they're having different issues with different groups of those Semitic people. So if you could get one law passed in that country, you've essentially made it where no one can argue about anything that's happening, no matter who it is that they're talking about.
QAnon has been proved to be false and also controlled by several groups. And that trust the plan thing was nothing more than an acquiescence to people not to take action. And, they built a cult following around this Q movement, and it was all proven to be false in the last few days. If you haven't seen that, I highly encourage you to take a look at the findings, the postings, and everything that you knew about this Q thing. Never was into it myself, but it's all false. It was all directed by a certain, couple groups of people as just an online venue to keep those who were going to take action from taking action. Got another one for you, Ransom. Back into the myths here. This one is the Ring of Nibelung, Nibelung. Nibelung is, in the classic sense, the gold was stolen from the daughters of the Rhine, and at dusk was restored, having wrought mean of doom from the Nibelungs, the Volsungs, and the gods themselves. Now it's been turned into a quartet, I guess, of the Rheingold, the Valkyrie, the Siegfried, and the Twilight Dusk of the Gods, 4 different musical compensations of the operas. To tell the full story of, get this, somehow the gods were in control of the gold again, stolen from the daughters of the Rhine. Again, how far back are we going to talk about protectors of the ancient Anunnaki treasures and what we consider Germany? Like, this is old school stuff we think of Sumeria, but now they're putting clearly out here that this was protected gold of the gods sitting somewhere around the Rhine River, which would be, classically in the middle of Germany. And the stories couldn't be told as stories. Again, you hit it on the head. Like, what were you allowed to say at these times? What weren't you allowed to say? Well, wind this way back. They were able to produce operas and tell the story through opera, but they sure weren't allowed to tell the story as it could be. The gold could be won by man out of the Rhine gold, but then it comes through and then it talks about how it's accursed gold that belongs to, well, the gods and the golden charms and this whole thing. But again, you were not allowed to tell the story of, what if you were to tell the truth? What if it was like, Mason's secrets? Oh, by the way, the Anunnaki, that's Anunnaki gold in the middle of the Rhine, and you got these like female protector ninja type of women around it, and and then somebody come in and stole it, and this whole thing. You can't come out and really say that, but you can portray it as some sort of like myth and legend and disguise it in opera of the actual story. So, I take a look at these types of things and be like, all right, the information's encoded in here. The full story of it is in here. You might call it a myth, you might call it a legend. But again, why is it coming back to gold again? Okay, so we come back to our modern, and the reason I was talking about the gold. These stories of old of protecting Anunnaki gold as like female guards of the gold along the Rhine River. Like, why is it gold such a thing? And now we're coming back into BlackRock wants to so BlackRock was, I don't know if you've read an enormous amount of articles. They are saying the only reason blockchain exists is to put every gram of gold on the planet in an accountable phase to know where it is. And I'm thinking, wait a second. All right, so that is nothing more than a pickup point for the star gods to come back and be like, where's all your gold? Okay, well, it's on the blockchain. We know where every gram is. We're going to call it all in. It's all in the smart contracts. So if we're looking at some sort of, excuse away thing, like right now, they're going to run gold to the moon, and then a lot of people are going to buy it. A lot of people are going to cash it in. A lot of people are going to sell it out to pay off other things, so they can swoop in an enormous amount of gold, because this paper thing means nothing. It's all collapsible anyway. I mean, after this is all done, people are going to run away. You're never going to remember their names. So what a better way to get all the gold back in from the wild, for a better term? Bring it up to $200,000 an ounce. At that point, I'm getting rid of my gold. I'm paying off everything. And if there's extra, then I'm going to buy other people's farms with it. So for me, even at that price point, I'm like, gold's going back. See you later. So for the pieces of paper on a debt system created by these same persons that have run this again and again and again, $4,500 gold, that's way low, in my opinion. Not financial advice, but everything I'm reading, they're talking about, well, 10,000 at the bare minimum. Some are saying 25, 40, 100, 200, 180, 140. I've heard an enormous amount of different price predictions for it.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, think about, if you just talk about that, the myth, and then you go back to the Anunnaki. If there was a group of people and they wanted the gold, they'd be like, well, why should I give you my gold? Well, because the gods said they want the gold. It belongs to them. And you find the same thing in like South America. Well, the god, cried and dropped the little tears of the sun down here, and it belongs to God. It's divine. the only difference between then and now is we've replaced the divine idea with government. Now government wants to know
Central
exactly
bank.
where all of the gold is, every little ounce of it. And it's just like what you were talking about. We bring up, every week or so they put one of these articles up that's saying protect your gold, protect your jewelry, get insurance on it. And just like you said, it's just like a big list of where exactly everything is. It's like a gun registry. Who are the people that have the guns? Where are they going to go if something goes weird? Well, they know exactly who has all the legal firearms. They just go knock on their door one at a time. I doubt that that'll work, but if you take all their gold first, now they no longer have a backup plan. And then if you start seizing land, then, we get back into the lords of Scotland and stuff that were trying to maintain their control on stuff and also giving away their sovereignty to the English because they didn't want to have a big, super war with them. But it ended up happening anyway. And guess who got all of those Scots gold? It went into the British Empire, which went into the royalty, which is the top of the pyramid. And they've run off with the gold. It's a secret. And whatever happened to Fort Knox? Whatever happened to that list of those people? We don't get none of these secrets. They flaunt it. We're going to give it to you. Then you get all kinds of news that distracts you. And, those myths can happen today. What if they say that, we did meet aliens and they only want gold for trade, or otherwise we can't have none of their tech? I mean, it's the same thing, and they could rerun that same scam again today.
Yeah, I wish I would have bought some gold. I didn't know it's run away too much in the price. I wish I would have jumped on that, but I was way late. It's way too expensive now. I would never touch. I don't even have any shit. I wish I could, but it's too expensive now. I missed that bandwagon a long time ago, And again,
The
that's the lesson
Anunnaki know
learned.
you're lying. We know you got giant piles of gold out there. The Anunnaki are going to come for you. They're going to watch this show. They'll be like, use the AI. He's lying.
I missed the bandwagon. That's an important point. Lesson learned. Should have, would have, could have, but didn't. Same with firearms. They're super dangerous. I don't feel comfortable with them around the house. Definitely wouldn't want one of those around here. That's for those people over there. Those people, I mean, sheesh. All the
Yeah.
would have, could have, should have. I guess maybe, but it's too late now. I mean,
Yeah,
maybe
you definitely
next.
don't want to store no food back.
No, I
Because
mean, why would you do that? The supermarket's open all the time, man.
well,
You
plus
just go
it's
by another
selfish,
supermarket and
right?
get that stuff. Why would you put anything by? That's stupid. What if it goes bad? You keep it too long. You forget about the can of tuna fish in the back. It's going to make the house smell up. That's stupid. Why would you store food?
Oh, I messed up your screen. But yeah, that's a dumb idea. That's completely selfish to stockpile
Totally
things like
selfish.
that. You don't
Cats
want to do
need
that.
cats' lives matter, man. Cats need tuna fish.
Oh man.
I don't want to steal the cat's tuna fish. Don't want to put it in my house and store it somewhere. I wouldn't do that. Poor little cat.
So what are you planning this year? Don't tell us. They'll come get it.
I'm on a fertilization schedule for all my fruit trees right now. I'm on a mad fertilization thing for the apples, the plums. Plums came out mad this year. I was super surprised because bloomed out super early, and I'd seen a lot of bees around there, and I was stoked that tons of bees were around, a lot of insects, wasps, all kind of stuff. But then it froze after that, and I was like, oh, we lost our plum crop again. Damn. But there's a huge, there must be a huge amount of fruit out there. And the peaches set real huge again, and the pears set super large again. So I'm like between those bouts of warm enough where insects come out pollinated, and it just got a chance to, grab on and start hitting some fruit before it got really, really cold. So it wasn't cold enough to freeze the fruit, although we do have a bunch of black cherries out there. I mean, in terms of like the plums, they got so frozen, the real tiny ones that they froze, and they're black actually from the frozen fruit hanging on the. So I spun all those off, got them away. But the fertilization of the plants you need right now to grow your food or wild foraging to know where everything is. Like we're hitting the blueberries, got the apples, plums, pears, and peaches. Like everything needs a different array of either fertilizers or composts or carbon source like wood chips and stuff. Everyone needs a little slightly bit different care and love, let's say. So it's that time of the year. I want to get it all taken care of because I want maximum production this year of fruit. That is a tradable, and barter is your friend. It's the oldest known form of I need something, I got something. So that's all kind of what's on my book and what I've been doing. I get up in the mornings and I think about that.
Yeah, I was just thinking I'm going to have to go up at the end of the summer and trade with those people in Colorado for some of their good veggies and different stuff. They can't really grow the melons and stuff like I do. I mean, that stuff just grows great out here in the sun as long as you give it water. See, and I'm always thinking about this scenario of the power going out, because if it actually went out here, we're just, we're in the wind and the dust, because they need the electricity to pump the water that I get, unless you have your own well and your own setup, which isn't a bad idea, to have like a refrigerator possibly, or something like that connected to a solar panel that you could just store your foods while everybody else is tripping out about all of their food going bad. I've just realized I was muted at that time, but I sent you that video of in LA where they're just putting pictures up of the food.
I saw that. It was incredibly baffling for me to see that. But then I sent you a picture back that had the anti-theft cases for the little single serving of Doritos. And like, where are we going already? You got to put this in perspective. Normally that stuff was meant for like high-end jewelry, things that could be stolen off a shelf. Caviar, something that you would, consider very high value in a supermarket or in a shopping mall. Well, this is in a supermarket. Those the little bags that you give to a kid to take for lunch to like go to school. They have those in the anti-theft cases individually now. Shocking. And then the thing you sent me where it was all like, it's the same thing. You're going to have to order everything online and have it picked up. So I was saying this little small town out here, 50 parking spaces for pickup. And I'm like, that's, something's gone. I talked to a few people, everybody denied it. They wouldn't say there was hardly any information about it. Even the people working there, I don't know, there's more people who order online. Yeah, not right. COVID only had 19 at the store. There's 50 now, 50. Not 19 during the height of COVID. So, I mean, it's more than double that.
Well,
so just put that in perspective. Now, if everything's getting stolen and there's such a reduction in things of the cutoff of supplies coming from China, they're going to put all that up there, make it appear, and you're going to have to go in and like order online. And by the way, everybody, please, before we go, buymeacoffee.com, Civilization Cycle, if you like our content, and also civilizationcycle.com. Jump over there, put your email in. We'll give you the show notes of the 10 bullet points or 8 bullet points of most important things we talked about tonight. Keep that as a list, share with your friends and family, and you can join the other 4,800 people that are on the list and getting our information given out every single week to keep this type of information flowing and conversations so we can all get ready together. So anyway, Ransom, pass it back to you and take us out, man.
Well, I was just thinking that the fake thing went into what we were talking about last year about soon you would have to order everything like that and that they would guard the food. And that's basically what it is. If they just put those pictures on the aisles instead of even stocking it, you have to tell them what you want, make a list, and then they give it to you. And it also reminded me of that movie that was mocking North Korea. Remember I was talking about that?
Where they have I forget the name of the movie. It was a stolen movie.
Like something.
I forget.
But yeah, they had the same thing. Plastic fruits, trying to make it look like things were good when they're not. So, if you're strolling through the store, it looks like it's all stocked, but then you realize it's just a vinyl sheet showing you the picture. And I hope that's not where we're going. But crime is increasing in certain areas. And like I said before, they're going to use that for an excuse to totally transform the way that you get your products from the store. And that will be all ordered online, all of it. And then you have to pick it up in those little lanes. We have the same thing where we're at. And you see when you go into the store that they're not trying to stock things like they used to. They're not putting, the food out there because it disappears before they could stock it. It's already been ordered and they just, take it out the back door.
Yeah, speaking of the safety, make sure you understand the concealed carry laws in your area, and you should get the training. And if it comes down to that, and know the laws in your own land, especially if you're crossing borders or whatnot, But if it comes down to it, it's going to be, we're reversing the clock back into a pioneering lifestyle. And you have to realize that during that pioneering lifestyle, they didn't even go to the shower without that next to them. Right. So we're coming back semi-creeping toward that world. But please understand how you can defend you and your families, and, take some self-defense class. I'm not the best, but, could I defend myself? Maybe not. I don't know. But more than the average person, maybe. And like, what is around there? Like, if somebody came into the room right now, this very second, I am thinking about things I could grab right here. That's where my mind is at, though. So I'm always scanning a place when I get in. I'm looking for the exit. I'm looking for something I could hit. If somebody comes in behind, what could I grab to like defend myself? Like, you need to get into that mind frame. Right. And it's not being scary or fearful. It's just like, okay, things are happening all over the world. If you don't take these security risks seriously, then you're asking for trouble.
Well, but anyway, let me ask you, how many Tesla bots do you have to train and arm to protect your property? Do you think they have algorithms already on those things to tell them not to do stuff? And how hard is it to reprogram those things? Because I was showing that article of the first RoboCop, which is essentially a Tesla bot that's going to be walking around. And we saw kind of the R2-D2 style in LA, and people were wiping poo on it and kicking it over. But I don't think they would do that with a man-shaped robot with a 360-degree camera that's armed. And, we don't have armed ones, but in China they do. They have tasers, they have nets. It's not much of a step to add a gun on it. And by the way, we have the dogs patrolling the southern border, which is another thing that we got muted on. We now have, like I predicted, an official military corridor zone along the New Mexico border with Mexico. And they're about to start growing massive fields of cannabis there, which is in direct competition with the people right over the border that have been classically bringing it over. So it's almost like they're wanting to start something there. Like that's the specific spot that something is going to happen internationally. And then we have a communist governor that wants to totally remove the Second Amendment from our state. They want to prosecute people for defending themselves. They release all of the hardcore criminals back out as soon as they get in there. And then at the same time refuse to enforce their side of the border and are continually, you have these areas that are called sanctuary cities. Well, they're sanctuary states. And I actually live in one. It's in a massive corridor between Mexico, Colorado, and upwards where they're still trying to get through.
I don't have anything to go on that except, how are you going to view life and take the next step forward? Things are changing all around us. So, handheld EMP device. If they can shoot a net, can we shoot back an EMP? That should be quid pro quo, should it not? See you next week. Thanks for staying with us.